And thanks for staying with us. After weeks of debate, committee meetings, and floor votes, the Tennessee legislative session ended Thursday, and lawmakers returned home. The Republican supermajority granted $400 billion annually in tax breaks and $1.5 billion in refunds for businesses. Also passed a law making it a misdemeanor for helping take minors out of Tennessee for an abortion, along with new restrictions on when towing companies can boot or tow cars from commercial parking lots. And of note locally, among many things of note locally, potentially phase out 2 Shelby County positions. Well, what do you make, Deidre, of the legislative session, what passed this session?
I'm just going to tell you, Brad, I'm going to tell you like I tell my staff all the time, I'm rolling my eyes right now, okay? They spent a great deal of time on the abortion, gender-affirming issue. I mean, how are they going to track if an adult takes a teenager out of state?
Put a state trooper in Carbondale, Illinois?
Yeah, maybe that's what they're going to do. But I'm just like, really? You've already banned abortion in the state of Tennessee. Now you're trying to monitor. It could be that, you know, I am the best friend of the mother who has to work and can't take my child across state lines for an abortion. I mean, I just think that they're just reaching down into people's lives, and it's way too much. So that's ridiculous. I think taking away 2 of our judgeships in Shelby County when, you know, crime is a big issue in Memphis and Shelby County. And why are you taking our judgeships? We need them. We need them more than any other part of the state, I think. So I think that's ridiculous. A lot of bad legislation coming out of this session.
And Sam, I know you were focusing on a lot of things, including FedEx Forum. What else kind of stood out and how it limited Memphis or impacted Memphis, one or the other?
Well, first I want to turn to that top line, which is, you know, the franchise tax changes, right? Like, right now the state is in good fiscal condition, right? Like, it's had a lot of revenue come in. It's had a lot of economic growth. There's a rainy day ahead, right? And a lot of revenue has just been foregone. And that may matter in the future, and that may have tough decisions that come, and people may not remember that, but that's going to be part of the reason why, and it's happening across the nation. I mean, this is a coordinated effort to really change franchise tax laws across the nation. First, I mean, Memphis and Shelby County got the money they needed, really the permission to use local money
right.
to finish the FedEx Forum financing, which is $550 million of public money going to an arena that was built 20 years ago. And that's not to say that things haven't changed since then, but like that's what Memphis received. And then from really the same state senator, Brent Taylor, there were a lot of bills about criminal justice. I mean, he probably had one of the most interesting sessions for a local legislature in some time. I mean, Brian Kelsey was interesting for other reasons, not because of the legislation.
Actual legislation being passed or introduced. What do you make of it, especially the local impacts?
Well, first to this point, I think Brent Taylor gained a reputation as being the most active local legislator, good or bad, that we've seen in a long time. I mean, he was all over the place with a lot of legislation, good or bad. You know, I've spent the last 4 months doing a lot of commentaries trashing this legislature, and for good and sufficient reasons. Deidre mentioned a lot of them. But they did do some other fairly decent things. Even on guns, they did unanimously say that a person who is deemed mentally incompetent, a person waiting trial, who is mentally incompetent to stand trial can never get their hands on a gun. Now, you would think that's a no-brainer, but for this legislature, that was something to even crow about. They also put some extra money in there for teacher raises and teacher benefits. So I give them some credit there. But the one thing that did not happen that I think is very notable, and I think you mentioned it, they turned down Governor Lee's voucher plan. And to me, that was a devastating defeat for this governor. He made that his signature legislation. He did not show leadership to get it passed. You wound up with 3 different versions, one in the House, one in the Senate, and his, and nobody was willing to negotiate and reconcile the whole thing. And then he tries to come out and spin it at the end saying, well, we made some progress. No, you didn't. You said that everybody was on board to do this, and it crashed and burned. This is a terrible look for your leadership.
Not to mention the first iteration barely passed,
right?
With some potential
criminality
to get across the finish line. Exactly. So, and another, you just mentioned what didn't pass. Another thing of note that was proposed by our local House Representative Antonio Parkinson, it would allow the restoration of voting rights for convicted felons. That also did not pass. And that was a bipartisan deal. You can see right there, as you just mentioned, Otis, the proposed expansion of school vouchers did not pass, as well as that, again, bipartisan proposal. So, Deidre, I guess, do you think vouchers will have a second life next session to expand it?
Absolutely. I think Governor Lee will probably be working it really hard over the summer and into the fall. I think, he'll try and bring it back up in January. But I'm just telling you, I mean, relationships matter. And if you want something to pass, you got to work it, Governor. Of course, I'm against it, but I mean, he has that. You would think he would have the gravitas to be able to work it to make sure that he got the votes to pass it, but it didn't happen. But he'll try again.
And it's kind of crazy. All of a sudden, you think to yourself, 2025, he'll only have 2 years left in office. Time flies,
Yeah,
and then other people might start thinking maybe a Brent Taylor or some other people aspiring for higher office. So
yeah.
And you're going to have some new legislators coming in because this is an election year. I don't know how they're going to feel about it. It is going to be a test of his leadership, but he will be looking at the possibility of being that lame duck governor by that time. I don't know how much he can get done.
I mean, I think one thing to watch is how much money do interests on both sides of this issue put into contested races, right? Like that's a real thing. I mean, if you want to change the game and you're interested in expanding vouchers in Tennessee, well, you got an ample chance to do it. You got an election season. Those who weren't with you, you can get them out. That's something I think reporters around the state are going to really have to watch.
That's a good point. That's
Excellent
a good point.
point.